Welcome to another edition of Hometown Happenings. I'm Supervisor George Hoehmtown. Thanks for joining us. So we've got a lot going on in the town of Clarkstown. I guess the biggest news is the opening of our newest park down in West Nyack. It's the West Nyack Hamlet Green and Firefighter Memorial Park. And I'm really delighted that this park is now open. There's still a few finishing touches that needs to be done, but the park opened up in the second week of February. And already during the nice weather that we've been having in February, the unseasonably warm conditions, there have been hundreds of people that have taken advantage of the park. The park itself, is a culmination of a long time project, over $4.4 million, in which we received close to $1.5 million in state grants to be able to accomplish this task. The park itself went from simply the 1 acre park, which is basically a hamlet green with a gazebo and a few sidewalks, to frankly a fully encompassed park now with a parking lot, about 12 spaces. In addition, with a fully handicap accessible, wheelchair accessible, rubberized surface playground with about a dozen apparatuses. In addition to that, we have a beautiful new expanded monument park. We're going to have several monuments down there. We have a 9/11 memorial. We're going to have memorials to several firefighters that gave their lives in service. Tom and Dan Foley statue is being developed now as we speak and should be installed later in the year. That will be a life-size statue of these two brothers who were West Nyack volunteer firefighters and members of the FDNY. Tom died in 9/11, and his brother Danny passed away as a result of 9/11 related illness. And then finally down there we have a monument as well to Chief Ken Maturo, who was the chief of the West Nyack Fire Department, who unfortunately died as a result of fighting a fire in July of 1973. And so really excited about that. We're also going to have the original statue down there of a fireman that will be commemorating the service of all of our firefighters, both living and dead, paid and volunteer, along with a plaque commemorating the Florian prayer, which is the prayer for firefighters. In addition to that, what's really great is we have a beautiful walking trail and boardwalk and some new water features down there with all new natural plants that are indigenous to the area. That was part of the state grant that we received, over $1 million to be able to do that. And so the walking trail itself is just over 0.2 of a mile. And if you actually go around the outside perimeter of the park, it's over 0.4 of a mile. So you can get your steps, or you can get your miles in walking or running, or jogging. Whatever the case may be. And again, we have a beautiful overlook area over the newly constructed pond with some benches for people to sit and some outdoor exercise equipment. This is the second new park that we've opened up in the last 6 months here in the town of Clarkstown. And I'm really excited knowing that this will become a hallmark of our parks department. It's a great new place for young families to be able to recreate. Again, we're going to be going out to bid shortly for an additional phase of work in West Nyack, which is the complete redo of the streetscape, along with decorative lighting, realignment of Klein Avenue into a four-way intersection, adding approximately 100 more parking spots throughout the downtown hamlet, as well as fixing some of the drainage. So a lot happening down in West Nyack, a lot happening in the town. In addition to that, I'm really grateful that we have our upcoming Senior Citizen Show. This had been a staple here within the town for over 40 years, and our late great councilman John Maloney, who was also a deacon at St. Anthony's, actually wrote and directed and starred in a bunch of these senior shows going back well over 30 years. Well, unfortunately, John passed away. The show shut down because of COVID. John passed away last year, and I'm grateful that his daughter, Patty Maloney Titlin, who is the distinguished professor at Rockland Community College in the Fine Arts, has taken up the mantle of the Maloney family, and she's actually coordinating this year's version of the Senior Citizen Show. It'll take place on Sunday, May 7th at Clarkstown South Auditorium. And again, it'll be a wonderful, wonderful program. We're looking for seniors to participate within the program. You can contact the Parks and Recreation Department, you can contact my office, or you can contact Patty Maloney Titlin at 845-574-4471. That's 845-574-4471. Last, I'm really grateful because we had passed a local law that extended the exemption for volunteer emergency service workers to receive a 10% reduction in their assessment on their house or their home here within Clarkstown. This is a bill that was sponsored by now Congressman but former Assemblyman Mike Lawler, along with Assemblyman Ken Zabrowski. It went through Albany, was signed by the governor, and Clarkstown was actually the first town in Rockland and one of the first in the state to pass the local law and adopt this exemption. So if you are watching this program, if you're a volunteer firefighter, volunteer EMS, and you own your home here within the town of Clarkstown, please contact the assessor's office. We'll help you file for the exemption. You are saving us, you're not only saving lives, but you're saving countless amounts of money for government by volunteering your services as a member of the volunteer fire departments or volunteer EMS, and you're entitled to a 10% reduction. But in order to get it, you want to fill that paperwork out quickly so you can get it for the upcoming tax year for next year. So contact my office or contact the assessor's office, and we'll make sure that you get those exemptions. So we've got a great program coming up for you. We have a special edition with Congressman Mike Lawler, who's new to Washington, D.C., and you'll learn a good bit about Mike and a good bit about some of the issues that he's addressing. All that and more on this episode of Hometown Happenings. Stay tuned. So welcome back to Hometown Happenings. I'm Supervisor George Hoehmtown. My first guest is Congressman Mike Lawler. Welcome, Congressman Lawler.
Thanks for having me, George. Appreciate it.
So, Congressman, I've known you for very many years and consider you a good friend, and delighted to have you on as our guest in this special edition, which will focus really on the residents learning a good bit about you. You were born and raised in Rockland, and Rockland born and bred. Live here, and I know you've got some great accomplishments in your past, and we're looking forward to great things in the future. So let's give the residents of Clarkstown an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the congressman. Tell us a little about where you were born and raised.
Well, appreciate it. You know, I was born in Good Sam Hospital in Suffern. Grew up in Nanuet from the time I was born through the time I was 12 years old. Used to go to Lake Nanuet every day during the summer. Played Nanuet Little League. I was part of the 1998 Nanuet Braves, which went undefeated. And won the Rockland County Tournament of Champions.
What position did you play?
I was a left-handed playing second baseman.
Oh, wow.
So I was one of the shorter ones on the team, but I was quick, and I loved playing Little League here in Nanuet. In fact, I knew Don Franchino from Little League. You know, he used to be the president of Nanuet Little League, and went to George W. Miller Elementary School. Had a great time there, and really, what some people know, but not a lot. When I was in second grade, I had a great teacher, Anna Petrov. She was a Russian immigrant, and really was a phenomenal teacher. But I was a September birthday, so I was one of the youngest in my class, and so she had gone to my parents and said, we really, he's smart, but he's immature, and he would really benefit from being left back. And, they had a program called The Gift of Time. And so I was ultimately left back and repeated second grade and had Miss Petrov for a second time. But it really made a profound difference in my life and, really helped prepare me throughout my school years and into college and my career. And I always look at that as a pivotal point in my life. And, so Nanuet and Clarkstown holds a special place in my heart. But when I was 12, I moved to Suffern, went to Suffern High School and graduated from there. Went to Manhattan College in the Bronx, went for accounting and finance, double majored.
You were the valedictorian there, right?
Yes. Yep. I graduated valedictorian in my class. And, it was a great experience being at Manhattan. When I was a freshman and sophomore, I was a vendor at Yankee Stadium, so I had a great opportunity to watch every baseball game for free. And the Yankees were competitive at the time, though they didn't win a World Series. I was hoping while I was there they would. But then I got into politics during the 2008 presidential election as an intern for John McCain on his campaign, and that really set me on the path politically. over the last 15 years.
Who would you describe as your political heroes?
Yeah, look, I think, for me, it's always been Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, Ronald Reagan, John McCain, Dr. Martin Luther King, people who had a profound impact on the history of our country and really advanced the cause of freedom and democracy, not just here in the United States, but around the world, and fought for equality and fairness and human rights and dignity. And I think, as I've taken office, I've tried to uphold that legacy and make sure that the work that I'm doing is reflective of that.
So we're going to get to some of the issues in a little bit, but I think the folks that are following you on Facebook and social media and seeing you, you seem to be everywhere. A lot of events, and it's great to see, and a congressman really hitting the ground running in the district. But what's been like the biggest adjustment for you with going into Congress? You were in the Assembly for 2 years and you did a great job, but you were also in the Assembly. Part of that time was COVID, right?
Yep.
So that had to be a bit of a change. But now you're on the big stage, Congress. What was the biggest change for you doing that?
Well, in terms of being everywhere, I learned from you. You show up to everything and very present, and I think that goes a long way in the community. People see it, they appreciate it, and I think it's a big part of being an elected official. Being there to listen to people, to hear from them, and to be there not just for great occasions and to celebrate people's accomplishments, but to really be present and for people to feel like they can come approach you about things. So that's something that I frankly took from you in the work that you've done as town supervisor, and really tried to parlay that in the Assembly and now in Congress. Look, the state legislature certainly prepares you well for Congress, especially in New York. It's not beanbag, it's rough and tumble, but you certainly get a feel for it. But it's a much bigger scale. I think what has definitely been the biggest change is, for me, I'm down there in Washington basically half the year. Mm-hmm. And I'm early into my term, but there's weeks where I'm down there, I'm not back in the district. And so not being as connected to home, is a little bit of a change. I've lived here my whole life, and so that kind of time period away. So you really have to make the effort to make sure that when you are here, that you're maximizing your time, that you're being present both on a family level, but also obviously in district. People want to see you. They want to know that you're around, that you didn't pack up and leave or stay down in Washington when you don't need to be. And so that's something where you got to maximize your time. And the other aspect of it that I've found is, from 7:30 in the morning to 10 at night, I don't have much time to myself. I mean, it really is, you're on the go from the moment you start the day, and that's certainly a little bit of a change from Albany.
So we'll talk about your local office and a little bit of that going forward, but just zeroing in, you're also a young dad as well, right? Mm-hmm. So what's the adjustment been like for your wife and for your daughter?
Well, my wife and I were expecting in April of 22. And, our daughter was born April 19th, and I was running for re-election to the state assembly. And that was a decision that we really made in large part because, we were having a baby and I wanted to be as available and present as I could be. And, ultimately when the maps came out and got thrown out in court and then redrawn by a special master, the map came out, and it was something where I really looked at and I thought I could win. And so, my wife and I discussed it and decided to take the risk. But it's certainly, running for office with a, 9-month-old now, right. Obviously, pretty much most of the campaign, was in her young months. And so it was difficult. Mm-hmm. And not being able to be there in every moment, and certainly, you do your best to be present and be part of, her early months there. And so, but watching her grow just over the last 9 months has been remarkable. And truly being a parent is definitely the greatest job and responsibility that anyone will ever have.
Yeah, and listen, I knew your dad a little bit. He was a great man. Unfortunately, lost him just over 10 years ago, and so I know family's really important to you. What's your living arrangements in D.C.? Do you're down there? Sometimes you have an apartment, or are you sleeping in the office? I mean, what's the deal?
So, prior to this year, members of Congress did not get any stipend or reimbursement for living expenses. So a lot of members choose to live in their office because it's expensive down in Washington. It's on par with New York City in terms of prices for hotels or rent. So on her way out the door, Speaker Pelosi actually made a change through the House Administration Committee to reimburse basically members for living expenses. They made a change in the rules, and that's a welcome change because it is difficult to maintain a residence up here in an expensive area like we live in, while also having living arrangements down there. So far I've been going to a hotel, and I'm waiting for the final rules to work themselves out on reimbursement and all that. Before potentially getting an apartment down there with a couple other members. You want to be comfortable. You want to not necessarily have to lug your stuff back and forth every week, but so we'll see how it plays out in the next few weeks.
So the other two things. I mean, recently we had the State of the Union. What was that like? As a brand new member of Congress for you?
On a personal level, it was really cool. I've, as far back as I can recall, I've watched, every State of the Union and, presidential addresses. And so to be in that environment where the President of the United States is delivering a State of the Union, and, to be able to turn my head and look and see, the special guests that are there. Bono was a few rows behind me up in the balcony. And so that aspect of it was on a personal level cool, but more, special than that was the fact that my wife, who's an immigrant from Eastern Europe, from Moldova, who came here over a decade ago, she became a citizen just over 2 years ago. She was my guest, so she got to sit in the speaker's box. And she was able to listen to the President of the United States deliver that State of the Union. And on a personal level, that's pretty special.
That's unbelievable. I do want to touch base. We'll take one more question here, and then we'll take our break. But you went to the White House too, right?
Yes.
So, obviously you've probably been to the White House, I would imagine, before visiting Washington. But I would imagine it's entirely differently going as a freshman member of Congress. So what was that like?
That was great as well. I mean, when the President of the United States asks you to come, you come. And so.
How many of you went?
There was a good number of us. Not all of us. There's 74 freshmen. I would say maybe about half went. But we got to go. I went with a number of my colleagues in the Hudson Valley: Mark Molinaro, Pat Ryan, a Democrat. And so we got to mingle. We got to talk to each other, talk to White House staff, secretaries within the administration, and then we got on a photo line to meet the President, Vice President of the United States, and had a moment to talk to the President. Took a photo.
What'd you say?
Well, I introduced myself and brought up a mutual friend, somebody whose mother worked for President Biden when he was a senator, and he remembered, her and my friend, and so just had an opportunity to say hello and then move on so they can meet the next member of Congress. But again, really great opportunity, and to think a year ago I wasn't even looking at running for Congress, and then here you are in the middle of the White House and talking to the President, but dealing with the challenges that America is facing and being part of the decision-making process, and it's pretty cool.
Well, we're going to take a break in just a moment, but when we come back, we're going to touch base on the committees you're on and a bunch of the issues that you're tackling, and you've really set an ambitious agenda. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon the office of which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I present Congressman Mike.
Thank you for everything.
In every family, small conversations can make a big impact. I grew up on tour with my parents. Kind of different, but we bonded over music and we talked. Honest conversations, like when my dad shared his experiences as an alcoholic. Your honesty gave me a sense of integrity that I wanted in my own life.
And I wanted you to know, from someone who's been in recovery more than 30 years now, that hard work is what creates success, not alcohol or other drugs, in whatever you do.
Talk, they hear you.
Because at the end of the day, DC isn't real. And it's my job to always remember that. What's real are the families I'm so honored to represent here in the Hudson Valley. Their dreams, their day-to-day struggles, their hopes for the future. Those are the things we spoke about during the campaign. And those are the things that I'm going to be 100% focused on for the next 2 years.
And welcome back to our conversation with Congressman Lawler. So, Congressman, you've got some great committee assignments, and maybe you could talk about those.
Yeah, I was really excited when I got elected. I asked the Speaker and some of the leadership to serve on House Financial Services and House Foreign Affairs. Those were the two committees that I was really hoping to get on. And primarily House Financial Services. It's considered an A committee. And so, a lot of people try to get on it. But I thought it was important for New York. Especially, there's about 30,000 financial service sector employees that live in the 17th Congressional District. So it has a profound impact, not just on the district, but New York's economy, as we well know. And so, I really wanted to serve on that. My background fitted. I went to school for accounting and finance. And so, I thought that was important. And in the Assembly, I served on the Housing and Banks Committee. So there's a lot of intersection and overlap there. And secondly, I wanted to serve on foreign affairs. Two of my predecessors covering Rockland County, Ben Gilman and Elliot Engel, a Republican and a Democrat, both served as chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And so Rockland County has always had a strong voice in foreign affairs, and certainly with a large Jewish community here, large Haitian community, large Irish community. There's a lot of intersection with foreign affairs in this district in particular. And given the crises that are going on in the world, the Russian invasion in Ukraine, my wife being from Moldova, her family lives about 30 minutes from the Ukraine border, and China. And, they are our greatest geopolitical threat. And so I wanted to be part of that process. So to be able to serve on both of those committees as a freshman, especially was really just a great opportunity.
So you've already had classified briefings, and you can't go into the substance, but we'll often hear about that, and people will see it on Fox and CNN and MSNBC, whatever news source they're looking about members of Congress, getting classified briefings. So what's a classified briefing like? How does that work?
Well, you go into the SCIF in the basement of the Capitol. And you gotta give your phone away, and you can't bring any electronic devices in. But you hear from administration officials generally on classified information, and so certainly you start to feel the gravity of the job and the importance of the work that we're doing, especially in those moments, and talking about issues that are of importance. And so, we've had a classified briefing on Ukraine. I've had a classified briefing on the Chinese spy balloon fiasco. And certainly, you learn sensitive information, and obviously there's things that I just can't talk about. But, you see the impact and the importance of it, and understanding that information as we make decisions as a body. And in concert with the White House.
And as it relates to the Foreign Affairs Committee that you're on, I anticipate that you're probably going to be interacting with ambassadors and folks of that nature, but also probably traveling too, right?
Yeah, so we already, I've already had dinner at the EU ambassador's house, which is 2 doors down from the Obamas in Washington, and also went to the Italian ambassador's house as somebody who's of Italian descent. That was a pretty cool opportunity. We had Nancy Pelosi at the dinner and Steve Scalise, and so it was interesting. But you know, we definitely have the opportunity to meet with world leaders and diplomats, and I think that's important, especially on the Foreign Affairs Committee, to be able to shape U.S. policy and make sure that we're making the right decisions. But certainly there will be opportunity to travel as part of CODEL's congressional delegations traveling abroad. You know, we're going to probably go to Ukraine at some point, as well as you know, going into the Pacific, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, among other areas. And so, you know, I'm especially looking forward to doing that and getting to understand on the ground some of the challenges in both parts of the world. So
let's move on to the issues now.
Yeah.
One of your big accomplishments as a member of the Assembly, as a member of the minority in the Assembly, just the one term that you were there, you tackled the whole issue with firefighters and tax breaks for housing. And the majority picked up on that, and they took your idea and massaged it, and it got through and signed by the governor. It had been talked about for years and years and years, and it didn't happen. But in your one term in the Assembly, largely through your initial efforts, that became successful. And every volunteer firefighter in Rockland now, if the municipalities adopt it, have the opportunity to get a 10% reduction at least in their assessments. So here in Clarkstown, if it's adopted by the school districts, it could be $1,500 to $2,000, and it's something that we need to do. It's a record of accomplishment. We know that you're going to take those type of ideas going forward. So I know, let's focus in on, you've already hosted a press conference here on the SALT. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that and some of the other issues that you're going to be tackling.
Yeah, and you know, that really was one of my proudest accomplishments in the Assembly. Working with Ken Zabrowski, we were able to advance that legislation forward and make it a statewide bill and provide all of our volunteer fire and EMS personnel a true 10% property tax exemption. And I'm hopeful that all of the municipalities will adopt it. And I want to thank you for being one of the very first in the state to act on it and enact it into local law here. But SALT is obviously a big issue. You know, in Rockland County, we pay among the highest property taxes in America.
And just so the residents understand, we're referring to it as SALT, but it's state and
local tax deduction, and there's a cap on it. During the Trump administration, they put a 10%, a $10,000 cap on the ability to deduct that on your federal income tax returns. And so I obviously, and many of my colleagues in areas like mine, want to lift that entirely so that people can fully deduct it again. It's due to expire in 2025, and so certainly we will push to make sure at a minimum that it does not get extended. But what I'm trying to do in the interim is obviously push to lift it completely, but really make some progress here. And I think we can make progress on it. You know, one of the first bills I introduced was doubling the cap from 10 to 20,000 for married couples. Right now, if you're single or married filing jointly, you can only deduct $10,000, period. And so I think, you know, it's fair to double it at a minimum for married couples. I've also signed on to legislation that would lift the cap to $100,000 for single, you know, those filing single on their tax returns, and $200,000 for those married filing jointly. And again, the objective is to lift it entirely, but we're trying to make progress and move this in the right direction. You got to build consensus, and you got to work with your colleagues on both sides of the aisle to get it through the House and the Senate, and ultimately get the president to sign it. And so SALT is my top priority. Making progress on that in this Congress is critically important to me, and especially in this district. You know, we lived in one of the highest tax districts in America, and so we have to make progress on that. Secondly, congestion pricing. You know, this is a state law that was enacted with federal approval And I feel very strongly that congestion pricing is nothing more than a tax on suburban commuters, and it's a money grab by the MTA. They think that we are the ATM for their bad management. They have been poorly managed. They're the worst run authority in the country, and it's not even close. And so I've introduced legislation in a bipartisan way with Josh Gottheimer, my neighbor in New Jersey, that would basically say to the governor and to the MTA, if you are to move forward with congestion pricing, we are going to pull back the $2 billion in federal aid that the MTA gets, and we are going to create a tax credit for those commuters who have to pay the congestion tax toll. And so, our objective is to make sure that people can afford to live here. And this plan, especially for Rockland County, where we do not have a one-seat ride, where we have limited express rail service, limited bus service, people have to drive into the city to work, is totally unfair, and we're not going to stand for it. And so I met with the governor just last week down in Washington, and we pushed back on this. And I told her, I am going to oppose this every which way. In addition, we're working on a number of other issues, really focused on combating the cashless bail crisis here in New York, combating the governor's housing plan. I'm on the subcommittee for housing and insurance, and what we can do from a federal level to support our municipalities, not mandate on them. And I think that's critically important. But we're doing a lot focused on, our plan, our commitment to America that Speaker McCarthy laid out during the campaign. How do we make the country more affordable? How do we make it safer? How do we protect parents' rights when it comes to their children's education? How do we secure our border and deal with the fentanyl crisis that is harming our communities all over the country, killing tens of thousands of Americans a year? This is a real crisis, and we need to be serious about it. And we need to deal with energy. We need to have a coherent energy policy that ensures that energy is affordable, that it's reliable, and that it's clean. Of course we want to reduce carbon emissions, but we got to do it in a smart way. And so we have to have an all-of-the-above approach to energy. We have to increase domestic production of energy. America needs to be energy independent. So those are the core of the issues that I'm working on, and I'm really excited, that we are almost 2 months in, and we're hitting the ground running and getting things done.
Well, Congressman, this has been great, and my last two questions for you really are, what's the biggest surprise that you've kind of encountered now as a member of Congress?
It's a great question. I think what is most surprising is just obviously, the way Washington's set up, and maybe it's really not too surprising given the nature of our politics, but it's not set up to be bipartisan. There's very limited opportunity to sit down with members from the other party. You have to work at it. You have to force it. And so I've been doing what I did up in Albany, which is to reach out to my Democratic colleagues, start building those relationships, find areas where we can work together, like I mentioned with Josh Gottheimer on congestion pricing or SALT, Mikey Sherrill from New Jersey on SALT. You have to work at that. And I think that's kind of the surprising, most unfortunate part, I think, of our politics is it really is set up to be partisan. Right. And I think that is somewhat destructive to the country. And so I'm going to do everything I can to really build those relationships and work across the aisle, because at the end of the day, the White House, the president is a Democrat, and the U.S. Senate is Democrat. So we need to work together. In order to get things done, we have to find a way to work together and advance legislation. And so that's what I'm focused on doing.
Good. And last question, you had the opportunity to preside over the House.
Yes.
So what was that like?
That was cool. You know, as a member of the minority of the state assembly, I never got the opportunity to preside because if they gave me the gavel, there would have been some changes very quickly. But no, I got to preside over some debate and voting, and so to be able to do that was a great opportunity. And you know, I heard from a lot of people who saw it live and you know, saw it posted later on social media. But you know, that's part of our democracy. You know, we need robust debate on the House floor, and so to be part of that in that way was a pretty cool opportunity.
Well, Congressman, this has been great. You're a good friend,
As are you.
an exceptional representative, you know, throughout the years as a member of the Assembly, and you've done a lot of, you know, policy work throughout the years. And just we wish you all the best and look forward to continuing to work with you. I know you're going to do great things. We didn't touch on infrastructure. I know there's a lot that you're going to be doing to help the towns here and the people of the 17th. But thank you for being such a great guest.
Oh, I appreciate it. You know, infrastructure obviously is a key issue, and we're going to be working hard on that. All of our municipalities need that support. And you know, if people want to reach out to us, they can go to my House website, lawler.house.gov. Our main office in district is going to be at Blue Hill Plaza in Pearl River. We'll be opening up an office on the other side of the river too at some point, but the main district office will be here in Rockland County.
Great. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This is an amazing country, the greatest the earth has ever known. My wife came here in search of a better life. That is what so many today and in generations past have done. They have left everything they know to come here, to come to America. And yes, we are a work in progress, but we must be diligent to keep America on the historic course of freedom. We must protect it and preserve it at all costs.
Email from school about the incident today.
Scary.
You know, teachers like me, parents, we don't always know as much as you guys do about what's going on with other kids.
Half the time, it's rumors.
Yeah, but if you're ever concerned about a friend who's having trouble with alcohol, prescription drugs, anything, you need to tell an adult, someone you know and trust. That can be hard, but speaking up about a problem is what helping a friend is all about.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank my very special guest, Congressman Mike Lawler. Until next time, I'm Supervisor George Hoehmtown. Thanks for joining us.